Welcome to Peak, a growth sport production that explores the power of culture on organizational performance. Music by The Edge. For show notes and more information, visit our website at growth-sport.com. Now here are your hosts, Mary Claire and Dr. Brian.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Mary Claire. Dr. Brian, sir, how you doing?
Good. It's good to be here with you.
Glad we're coming back. For all of our listeners, we just did a kind of a long series on Brian's book, The Culture Code, and went chapter by chapter, starting with why he wrote the book to the conclusion, and highly recommend folks that are interested in understanding how to get their teams and organizations to be strategically aligned and then connect that with day-to-day execution. This is a go-to book. We're going to continue the conversation on many of the topics in the book that we often consult on clients with. And today, we're going to talk about the F word, Brian.
That's right.
Focus. Okay. So
it's a 5-letter F
it
word.
is a 5-letter. Yeah. We're in Q1, the end of Q1, or kind of nearing the end of Q1. Many organizations have made goals. And the question is, are they still executing on those goals? Because the whirlwind happens. And what we're trying to counter with the process and the sport framework is countering the whirlwind. But the whirlwind's real. We talk to our clients all the time about that. The whirlwind is real. So we're going to talk about focus and how to maintain focus, whether to know you've lost focus. So, Brian, let's talk about that 5-letter word, focus.
Yeah. Focus is the most important thing relative to the outcomes we desire. And you and I know this. We've seen it over and over again. When you get an organization focused, everyone rowing in the same direction, you get outcomes that you don't otherwise see. And interestingly, we do a lot of consulting in December and early January, helping teams get aligned, helping them get focused, helping them understand what they're going to go do. But by early March and April, a lot of times you come back and these companies are way off the rails, and you have to ask why, what happened, and why are they not continuing to remain focused? If we start first with and this is kind of axiomatic, that focus leads to outcomes because it pushes more energy onto those outcomes than it would otherwise. And then to your point, as you mentioned in the intro, we often get consumed in this whirlwind, which makes we find ourselves responding in ways that we think are focused, but it's really responding to the urgent at the expense of the important.
Yeah.
So we should define focus. Focus is really the ability to focus on the important, but not urgent.
To maintain focus too.
Yeah, to maintain focus on those important things that are not urgent. And it might make sense to just kind of revert or refer back to that framework that we had used before. Yeah. So if you take a 2x2 matrix and you put urgent and not urgent on the bottom and important and not important on the top, on the vertical axis, then you can break that down into 4 quadrants. You've got urgent and important. You've got urgent, not important. You've got important, not urgent. And you've got not important, not urgent, right? If you look at that matrix, and we mentioned this in one of our earlier podcasts, there's some intuitive and unintuitive places where we put our attention. So the first place we respond is the urgent and important, and that's obvious. Those are the things that if we don't take care of, the wheels are going to fall off. The place is going to burn down. It requires our immediate attention. And that's kind of easy because it's like, we've got to do it. But then the question is where do we go next? So we've addressed the urgent and important. Now what? And it turns out that a lot of organizations move to the urgent, not important. And it takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy. And the problem is that it continues to feel urgent and important, but we're not very good at distinguishing between what's important and what's not important. In fact, in many cases, we'll define important by its urgency. And we do this in lots of ways. If your phone rings, that feels urgent and important, so you answer it. But you don't really know if it's important. You know it's urgent, but you don't really know if it's important.
This may be counterintuitive too, but what creates a whirlwind is the continual focus on the urgent, not important.
That's right. That's the definition of whirlwind in a lot of ways. Right?
Yeah. And I think there's two phases to getting out of the whirlwind. One is just defining the things that we're going to focus on, that we define that are critical. A lot of organizations think they've done this, for one, and they haven't, or they have too many things that are important. So then everything becomes
That's right.
critical and urgent. So there's a just decision on what is, and there's a focusing effort on making sure there's only 2, maybe 3, but likely 1 to 2 of those things that we're focused on. That's step 1. Step 2 is then having the process to stay focused on it. But you can keep going around the matrix, but there's a reason we keep ending up in the whirlwind.
That's well said. In fact, let's come back to that as we finish the matrix on how many things we can focus and remain focused on, because that's a very important point. So we have this intuitive response of important and urgent. Then we have this counterintuitive response, which is let's keep going down this path, even though things aren't important. Even when most of us would say, if I knew it wasn't important, why would I spend any time on it at all? Just because it's urgent. Then we say, well, what's next? And here, this is, again, counterintuitive. We'd think, well, let's at least do the important next. But oftentimes we end up doing the unimportant and not urgent, because it's kind of like, wow, we've been spending so much time and effort on the urgent that we need a break. So, we go to the water cooler, we talk to each other, we play solitaire, we go to lunch, we do other stuff because we just need to give ourselves a little bit of a break. And then the last thing we focus on is the important but not urgent, precisely because it's not urgent.
Yeah.
And it's easy to procrastinate. And by the way, these important but not urgent things are typically large. They're typically hard.
Heavy.
They typically take time. They don't get done in one sitting, so that it takes concentration and planning in order to actually do that work over a period of time. And there's some endurance that's involved in this as well. Because it's hard work, we oftentimes will get started on a big project and then lay it aside and not pick it back up again, because it, again, is hard and it takes a lot of energy and effort. But that's where the most value lies, is in the important but not urgent. That's where competitive differentiation lies. That's where, the value add for our customers, our product, our suppliers, our partners, everything that is going to really matter is in that place over the long haul.
So the whole process is to orient around the right things and avoid the things that aren't moving the needle. We've got the matrix. I think this is usually an aha moment for everybody, and there's a lot of head nodding when we're in a room with a team. So then they ask, how do we operate differently? And as we said earlier, 1, you just have to actually name what you're focusing on. Yeah. 2, the things that are big and heavy and meaty, I didn't say this before, but it's breaking it down into manageable, understanding the path to get from point A to point Z. And then you get the key performance activities. So what are the little things I need to do each week to make it feel manageable on moving on the critical? So that's where KPAs come into play to help you focus on the things that are important but not urgent, and the things that are really going to move the needle.
You said 2 things really important first. First of all, you got to keep it in front of you so that you keep your eyes on that prize, and you can only do that with a very small number of things. This is also counterintuitive, because as high performers, we think, well, let's load up all the important things. Yeah. But you can't do it. You can't keep your eye on that many balls in the air. Things will fall off, or they'll get lost or dropped or forgotten. So it's 1 to 3. And if you can do that, then think about them as landing airplanes one at a time, and then load another one up. That's a critical component. The other part of this is that is really helpful is to break them down into manageable bite-sized pieces. Yeah. Because the very thing that makes them hard makes it easy to procrastinate them. Whereas if you just take a commitment to do one small thing, then it's that whole adage of eating the elephant one bite at a time. We don't eat the elephant all at once. In fact, if you had to eat the elephant all at once, that's why you put the elephant aside. You can't do it. Yeah. But you can take a bite every day, and eventually that eats the elephant, and that's what you're trying to accomplish.
So when I circle back here to the prompt, which on focus. So we've defined what focus is. We know why people, well, let's talk the reason, one of the reasons people lose focus, we've talked about, focus was never defined, or it feels too hard. So we haven't broken it down in a manageable I think the other thing that we see is that markets change, things happen, and something that felt like a priority or that should be the focus, now where it's in question, should it be? And so then we get scattered again. So I would love to ask you, from an organizational perspective, what's the process, or how do we assess whether this still really is the important but not urgent?
Yeah. Here, I love the analogy of sports teams. So right now, we're right in the middle of college basketball. And I don't know about you, but I enjoy college basketball. A lot of fun to watch. Isn't it interesting, though, that they work before the game, practicing and coming up with a strategy of what they think is important that they're going to do in the game? And then they get in the game and the whirlwind gets unleashed and things happen.
Yeah.
The other team has a strategy. Players get injured. Somebody might be playing really well or not well. And the coach has to look at that and say, do we continue with what we're doing or do we make adjustments? And in almost every sports team, there have to be adjustments. Even if the core strategy and core direction remains, you have to make adjustments. And so how do they do these? Well, they call timeouts. And those timeouts are short adjustments, right? Where it's like, hey, let's make some quick changes. Let's call some different plays. Let's focus on some different things. And then you have a big adjustment at halftime, or if you're playing in the women's game, quarters, where you can sit down and have a little bit longer discussion around what changes and adjustments you might need to make. You might still be centered all around the same strategies and the same focus, but you have to make these subtle adjustments and these changes as you go. Now, if you're getting crushed, you might have to throw the whole thing out, start all over again at halftime. That may be true, but more often than not, they're tweaks at the margins as you play the game. And then after the game, you can decide whether you want to do something different for the next game. And so as an organization, it's no different. If you said, okay, well, let's go after this for the next 6 months. Now we're going to make some adjustments along the way. And at the end of 6 months, we're going to evaluate and decide whether that's still the right thing and then refocus. So it's constantly refocusing. You can't just focus one time. That focus has to constantly be adjusted and refocused as you go in order for that to work.
I think the other thing we'll see, so some organizations, or this happens frequently, you feel like you make decisions or you made decisions on here are the things we're going to focus to, but without the process to keep coming back to that, you end up drifting from it.
Right. Two processes, right? One is if you're not taking any steps to work against that focus, then you don't know whether you're actually making progress. Yeah. That's the KPA side. And then reviewing and coming back and reanalyzing the progress you've made, the roadblocks you've run into, what's working, what's not working, and any adjustments that need to be made so that you can then go back to the number one. Are we doing the right KPAs? So those two things are an iterative process. Work, evaluate, work, evaluate, work, evaluate.
And that's on a weekly basis and a quarterly basis, typically.
That's right.
Always on a weekly basis, typically on a quarterly, not half time sort of situation.
Correct.
Okay.
That's where it works the best.
Any other pieces of advice? Again, we're 2 months in, people are heads down, the whirlwind's real. People are trying to maintain focus. Any other pieces of advice for our listeners, Brian?
Just one last one, which is you've got the focus, you've created some KPAs. You have to set aside some time to take those bites every week. Schedule them in if you need to. Otherwise, you get to the end of the week, great intentions. I had a couple of small bites I was going to take. I just didn't get to them because the whirlwind was so big. So you have to schedule the time to take the bites. And as you and I both know as well, and this is also counterintuitive, if we do that well over time, it will diminish the whirlwind. It actually makes the whirlwind more manageable. It reduces the whirlwind and makes it so we have more time to do more important things, which makes us more effective and perform at a higher level, which reduces the whirlwind even further. And you can see how you get to this peak performance in ways that are really structured and planned that change your culture as you go.
I'm pulling an analogy from another conversation that was more spiritual oriented, but this idea of like, once you get in the mindset of focus, it's like you put your focus glasses on, and over time, you like refine the prescription and you can more accurately understand and assess what actually should I be doing with my
what
time.
Is important. Absolutely right. You get much better at distinguishing between urgent and important. That's absolutely true.
There's Great so point. Much habit creation and all of this too, which we can touch on in another episode. But Brian, a pleasure, sir. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks to all of our listeners. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out at growth-sport.com. If you want to learn more about the system, our software, the book, or if you want to have a conversation with us, happy to chat. Thanks so much, Brian.
You bet.
You've been listening to Peak, a Growth Sport production.